Sot në Tiranë ka mbritur për një vizitë zyrtare në Tiranë deputeti konservator i parlamentit Britanik dhe antari komisionit jashtëm të këtij parlamenti, zoti Henry Smith. Ai ka zhvilluar një sër takimesh, por kjo intervistë merr edhe rëndësi të veçantë, nisur edhe nga, si më thënë, tensionet apo problemet që ka patur në raportet mes Shqipërisë dhe Britanisë së Madhe. Kryesisht kjo e shkaktuar edhe me valën e emigrantëve që kanë mësuar kryesisht ato shqiptarë përmes kanalit të La Manche duke përdorur gomonet. Si janë raportet ndërmjet Shqipërisë dhe Britanisë së Madhe? Si janë raportet mes qeverisë shqiptare dhe qeverisë britanike? Por si janë dhe raportet e Partisë Konservatore me partinë e saj si motor në Shqipëri, Partinë Demokratike? Për këtë do të flasim me të ftuarin tim personte, zotin Henry Smith. Mr. Smith, thank you for this interview. Thank you for being here in Tirana.
Thank you for your welcome. It's good to be here.
Thank you. First of all, which is the purpose of your visit here in Tirana?
Well, I'm really here on a fact-finding visit to meet with politicians who are hoping to be elected in the local elections on the 14th of May, to find out about the political process, but also to understand some of the challenges that Albania faces and how that has an impact on the rest of Europe, including the United Kingdom. So it's really to speak with journalists, with politicians, and with the media such as yourself to really find out much more about the country.
Mr. Smith, what is your first impression of being here in Tirana? You speak that you are here to watch the situation in pre-election time here in Albania, but today, let's say, we used to hear that a member of a DIPA party in a local of Skuderi, his car has been wrecked up by a bomb. Is this a normal situation for a pre-election situation?
Well, certainly, I think violence has no place in a true democratic process. And obviously that's quite shocking to hear news of a bomb, a car bomb of an election candidate.
This is not an election candidate, but is a local DP leader.
Anyone taking part in the democratic process, I think, should be able to do that without the fear of violence or threats. And that's why it's very important that I'm here to really find out about some of the challenges that I think are faced here in Albania and how that impacts both the country more widely and, as I say, your friends and neighbours across Europe and the rest of the world.
Well, what was the first information that you got about the electoral situation here in Albania? You had today a meeting with DP leader, Mr. Berishës.
Well, clearly, it's quite a challenging political situation. It's quite different from the way that elections take place in the United Kingdom, and it seems that there are some issues that politicians deal with in this country, which makes it much more difficult, I think, to get the message out about alternative policies, alternative ways forward for the country. So it's been very interesting speaking to a range of politicians, but as I say, also journalists as well, to get a broad perspective of how Albania is developing here in Tirana. Clearly the city has grown very quickly. It's now got, I understand, almost 1 million people, a third of the population. And yet there are some real challenges, I think, for the economy here in Albania, and I think that is driving some of the migration issues that we're seeing in the rest of Europe, including in the United Kingdom, as a result of the political and economic situation here.
As you're talking about the migration wave that Albania is facing, but also the United Kingdom is facing in their shore, what is the optics of London toward Albania on what is happening?
Well, I think the optics of large-scale migration is always something that creates political headlines, and sometimes those political headlines are used in a way that doesn't truly reflect the complexity of the situation. I don't think many people blame people for wanting to seek a more secure economic future for themselves. I think the real concern in the United Kingdom is the nature of that migration, that people smugglers are used for people to cross the English Channel into the United Kingdom, and people in the country, by and large, feel that that is an unsustainable problem that needs addressing. And I think one of the big issues is that if there were greater opportunities for Albania here, then fewer people would want to leave the country. And I think that migration to other parts of Europe from Albania is having a detrimental effect on the economy here in Albania. So I think it's a problem for both Albania, and it's a problem for other parts of Europe as a result. But as I say, I think it's important to differentiate between those people who are migrating for economic reasons and those people who perhaps are using illegal routes such as people smuggling and the criminality that can go with that.
Absolutely. How you will describe the Albanian community in UK? I think even in your district you may have Albanians who work and live there. Well, which is your impression about them, about the Albanian community in the UK?
Well, I think people from Albania who come to the UK, by and large, become because they want to secure employment, they want to secure economic benefit to themselves, and I think that most people view that as quite understandable. There are some concerns, maybe this is amplified more than is actually the case in the media, about the almost exporting of criminality from Albania into the UK and other countries, and I think there's perhaps quite a focus on that, although that is probably not an accurate reflection of the vast majority of Albanians. And I've got a number of Albanian friends, and I value that friendship.
Our Prime Minister, Mr. Rama, during his last visit in London, used to claim that it's not that Albanians are exporting their criminality. Maybe they found the criminality in UK. Is this a correct political statement, in your opinion?
Well, every society has criminality, and it's a problem that every society faces. Every country has criminality that is homegrown, but also I think with an unregularized route of migration, it can allow criminality to cross borders in a way that is unchecked, and therefore I think it is both true to say that there is homegrown criminality in the United Kingdom, of course there is, but I also think it's true to say that there is an element of criminality that is coming into the UK from Albania, from many other countries, but what is important is to stress that I think that is a minority of people who are entering the country rather than the majority.
Okay. What can, in your opinion, or your expectations, what can Albanian government do more to prevent, first of all, these criminals coming in England, or how both the government can cooperate to prevent or to get back these criminal elements, and what can Albanian government do more to stop this wave of migration of, let's say, normal person who just want to have a better life?
Well, I think in terms of the criminal elements, I know that the British government is working with Albania on a number of programs to try and reduce that flow of those who are crossing borders for criminal reasons. But I ultimately think the best way to make sure that there is stable and sustainable migration is to make sure that there is an economy that is functioning for Albanian people here in Albania, which means that not so many Albanians feel the need to leave their homeland to go to other countries to find employment and to find economic activity. So I think it's very important that Albania is an open society, open to commerce with Europe, with North America, with the United Kingdom, so that there is a wealthier society here in Albania, and therefore that benefits this country as well as meaning that people, when they migrate, do so in a regularized way and not in a way that really facilitates people smuggling gangs on the beaches of northern France.
Do you get any these messages or positive commitments of the Albanian government during the last visit of Prime Minister Edi Rama in London?
Well, I'm not a member of the British government, so I wasn't party to those discussions with Prime Minister Rama, but I understand that a number of agreements were reached. But I think this is a bigger issue than just some agreements about between governments. This is an issue, I think, of economic sustainability here in Albania and sustainability of migration to the United Kingdom and other countries. What we see right now is not a regularized situation, and therefore that creates problems both here in Albania and in the United Kingdom and elsewhere. So I think addressing some of the core reasons as to why people want to migrate in large numbers is very important.
But can you wonder, Mr. Smith, that why are not the Montenegro's people or the Albanian of Kosovo or the North Macedonian citizens or Greece ones, the ones who are flowing toward London or toward the UK, but they are only Albanians? Is this a problem in itself?
I think it probably speaks to the fact that the economic situation here in Albania isn't as strong as it is in some of those neighbouring countries like Montenegro, like Kosovo, like Greece, where yes, there are economic...
Or even North Macedonia.
Or North Macedonia, yes, there might be economic challenges in those countries. There are economic challenges in the United Kingdom as well, in many parts of the world, as we recover from COVID, as we deal with the war in Ukraine. That has put pressure on economies around the world, but I think the economic problems here in Albania seem to me, from those I've spoken to be particularly acute, and therefore I think is very much driving some of the unsustainable migration. And I say that unsustainable for the Albanian economy and society, as well as those countries who are receiving large numbers of people in a short period of time.
As a member of a foreign committee of UK Parliament, what is your opinion about the relationship between Albania and UK by now? And what can be done more to positive them?
I think what's very important is that relationships between countries aren't just between the governments of those two countries, but those relationships are between the people as well. And I think it's very important that there are relationships with parties that aren't necessarily in government in Albania. So the Democratic Party, for example, I think it's very important that there's engagement with them, even though they're not the government of Albania at the moment, because it's important that there's a broad exchange and understanding, I think, between politicians and people in the UK and politicians and people here in Albania.
So as you mentioned, the opposition as another gate of a relationship between UK and Albania. Do you consider that the designation of leader of the opposition, Mr. Berishës, as non grata from London government is a problem on this kind of bridge relations? And was you aware when you meet Mr. Berishës today of this designment?
I was aware of that status, and one of the things I wanted to hear from Mr. Berishës was his understanding and take on the non grata issue that he personally faces. I'm not somebody involved in the judicial process, so it's impossible for me to judge the merits of that case, but what I am interested to hear about is some of the reasons perhaps why that has occurred. And it occurs to me that some of the designations that we have seen perhaps have more to do with politics than they do with actual evidence. But as I say, that is something that is my initial impression, and it's something that I don't have all the information to personally make a full judgment on myself. But it seems clear to me that the extent of the liberalisation of democracy in Albania could go a lot further, and that it would benefit from there being much more open and free approaches to the democratic process, rather than labelling people with accusations for political gains.
But some critics here in Tirana especially may say that how is it possible that an MP member of UK Parliament could have a meeting with a person that is designated as non grata from his own country? How do you answer to that?
Well, I'm meeting lots of people when I'm here in Albania, and I'm keen to get a range of views. What is very important, though, in a healthy democracy is that there is a viable opposition, a viable alternative to what the government programme is. That goes for any democratic country, and I think if that is curtailed, if that is prevented, then that's damaging not only for democracy, but I think that's then more widely damaging for a country's economy and international relations as well. So you know, I'm here to hear the range of views here in Albania, and to try and do what I can to encourage a healthy and open democratic process.
Just another last question about the non grata. Mr. Berishës has claimed several times, even the first time when USA designated him as a non grata, but even the second time when the UK government, Home Office in this case, designated him as non grata too, that in both cases there are no evidences to him, show it to him or even to the public, that why he was designated as a non grata. You mentioned before that more than a process based in proofs, that this like a political decision. But what can we understand in this case when you say that it was political? What do you have to have in front of our eyes?
Well, I think if somebody is going to be accused of wrongdoing, there needs to be evidence of that wrongdoing. And there needs to be a robust and independent judicial process that looks at that evidence and determines whether somebody is guilty of what they're accused of or not. And I think it's important not just to accuse somebody of something, but if you're going to do that, you then need to follow through with the evidence and an independent judicial process that then determines the truth of that evidence, and without that, the concern is that it's perhaps about politics than it is about a genuine sense of whether a crime has been committed or not.
But is there any possibilities that you or maybe any commission in UK Parliament may ask information on how this decision on Mr. Berishës was taken? Is it possible?
Well, what I would recommend, what I said to Mr. Berishës earlier on today, was that if he feels that the UK Home Office has wrongly designated him as somebody who is not allowed to enter the United Kingdom, he needs to lodge a formal appeal against that decision so that the evidence can be looked at and a decision can be reviewed as to whether it is a just decision or not.
Can be reviewed this decision if there are
people have a right to appeal if a decision has been made against them on immigration grounds. And if an accusation has been made as to why somebody shouldn't enter the country, then it's important that the evidence is looked at in an independent way.
What is your main topics of discussion with Mr. Berishës on your meeting?
Well, I think he was very concerned about the status that he has been given, but also I think it was important to discuss how the Democratic Party, ahead of the local elections in May, have gone through a primary process to select their candidates, something which I think is encouraging. It's an open process that means that candidates have the real rigor of a wide base of people deciding who they want to have represent them. And I think that's quite an interesting and I think promising development here in Albania.
Mm-hmm. During the last 2 years, DP party here in Albania is being entered in a reshuffle process, let's say, especially in the ideological field, and they are looking furthermore to the conservatism. What do you suggest to the DP party in this way, and what can be done more to further strengthen the relation between Conservative Party in the UK and DP party in Albania?
Well, my principles are conservative principles. That's my political background. I believe in a smaller state. I believe in lower taxation. And I believe in policies that strengthen the family, that strengthen the nation. I think all of those personally are positive for a society. And my advice to any Conservative Party seeking election is to provide a clear alternative to what socialism has to offer. And I think that if a clear alternative is provided, then the party will much more likely be successful.
Hope it will go in the end in success. Thank you very much for your interview.
My pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Mirë të nderuar televizionistë, kjo ka qenë intervista që unë kam zhvilluar me deputetin e parlamentit britanik dhe antarin e komisionit të jashtëm të këtij parlamenti, zotin Henry Smith.